So we're starting Be'ez Hashem Siman Nun Ches, and this is a continuation of the tefillin debate between the Lubavitcher Rebbe and the Satmar Rebbe. And what he said in the last siman was that there's this inyan, besides guf naki, meaning what the Gemara says, which is not to pass gas, guf naki also means not to have machshavas rois. And the source was the Ram Rottenberg brought by the Beis Yosef. Okay, so we saw the Lubavitcher Rebbe responded that at least during that time, it's a new thing for them, they won't be have machshavas rois. And then he also responded that the Smag encouraged Rasha to put on tefillin. So that's what he's going to respond to here. Umash lekasav Smag mitzvah sasei gimel. The Smag says, Ki masha amru Razal. He says what Chazal say, Shabbos mem tesem aleph, tefillin tzrichin guf naki ke Alisha. Tefillin require a clean body like Alisha b'akanafayim. Zehu be'adam shemenicham b'kol hayoim. He says that's only by people who put them on all day long. Ava b'shas tefillah, he says during davening, ein l'cha Rasha shelo yehei roi l'tefillin. There's no Rasha in the world who's not fit to put on tefillin. Kal v'chomer mi sefer Torah, and you can learn it out from a sefer Torah shemekudash yoister, which is more holy than a tefillin, and still v'hakol oichzim b'sefer Torah b'shas tefillah. Anyone's allowed to hold a sefer Torah during davening. Ad kan dvarav. Okay, so now, doesn't that justify the Lubavitch campaign? So he says, Kvar Kosev Hu Ater Zav, the Ater Zav, which is the Levush, writing at the time of the Shulchan Aruch, same time, right? Reish Hilchos Tefillin, V'zel L'shoynoi, V'yesh She'ein Menichim Tefillin, D'tzarich Guf Naki, Smag Ba'asei Gimel. He says there are some people who don't put on tefillin at all because tefillin need a Guf Naki, and they're afraid they don't have a clean body. Shahayu nimsaim biyamav, and so the Teres Zav explains a little more detail about what this means. Who are these people that the Smag is referring to? He says there were actually in his time alafim uravavos bisfarad. There were thousands and tens of thousands of Jews living in Spain. Shaloyhayim menichim tefillin mitamana, that didn't put on tefillin at all because of this reason, because they weren't sure they're on the madrega. Kind of like people today. Let's say they say I don't fast on Bahab, and I don't put on Rebbeinu Tam tefillin because I'm not on the madrega. So back then they held regular tefillin are also kind of like something for very exalted holy people, but regular people don't put on tefillin. Okay, so you see from this, Hare bara b'dvarav. You see now what's going on here. When the Smag said that everyone should put on tefillin, he wasn't talking about Freya Jews and people off completely irreligious people. He was talking about people who are religious, but they don't hold that they're on the madrega. He says, people who stopped putting on tefillin because they were afraid she'ein lohem guf naki. They were afraid they don't have a clean body. It's not that they were bad Jews, they were not observant. They were observant, but they just didn't want to keep this. They held it was like a high madrega. Therefore, you have to say the Masha Kasav Ein L'cha Rasha. The Smag uses the words Ein L'cha Rasha Shelo Yehei Roi L'tefillin, that every Rasha should put on tefillin. So he says no. Kavanasle L'geder Echad Mi B'chinas Rishaim. It doesn't mean real Rishaim. He means a certain type of meaning of the word Rishaim. How is that possible? Ukvar Bir Hatanya. So he says, look, Lubavitchers, look in your own Tanya. Likutei Amar in Perek Aleph. Tahadi Amrinan the Mechza al Mechza, that it says somewhere in the Gemara, it says I think in Rosh Hashanah, it says Mechza al Mechza Mikri Beinoni, a person who's half mitzvahs and half aveiros, he's halfway in between, he's called a Beinoni. He's like a middle person. V'roiv Zechuyos, someone who's more like towards the side of good, Mikri Tzadik, he's called a Tzadik. He's 51% good, he's a Tzadik. So the Tanya says, "Hu shem mushal, l'inyan schar v'oinish." It's not really the meaning of the word tzaddik. A real tzaddik is someone who's perfectly good, and a real Rasha is someone who's even a little bit less than a tzaddik, is already a Rasha. Just that for the sake of schar v'oinish, the Gemara uses the word tzaddik in Rasha. So he says, "L'inyan schar v'oinish mikri tzaddik b'dinoi." Tzaddik just means that he's going to get a good judgment. Beinoni. Sorry, I missed the line. he's a tzaddik because he wins in his judgment. If he goes into let's say Rosh Hashanah and he's 51% good, Hashem's going to decree on life on him. But the real meaning of the word, he says, even if someone does a small aveira, shall divrei sofer it's a derabanan mikri Rasha. He's already called a Rasha, calls man shelo yasa tshuva, until he does repentance. Even someone who sees others doing an aveira and doesn't protest is called a Rasha. Ad kan l'shoinai. This is the Tanya. So you see what the Tanya is saying. He's saying that really a Rasha could be someone who's doing one aveira, right? So the Smag is talking to people like that, people who are observant Jews, but they're not 100% like on a high madrega. They feel like, okay, maybe I once in a while spoke lashon hara, once in a while maybe I talked in the middle of davening. I don't know. They don't feel like they're on the highest madrega. They don't learn Torah every second of the day. So those people, okay. So the Smag says to put on tefillin. Okay. Okay, then he says like this: V'oid kal v'chomer ben benoy shel kal v'chomer. He says it's even more. B'mi sheyesh lo roy v'avoynas afilu yesh b'yadoi kama v'kama mitzvahs havi rasha l'chol deis. He says it's someone who has mostly sins. Right? So the Gemara says that he gets judged unfavorably. He gets judged chas v'shalom to die. So afilu yesh b'yadoi kama v'kama mitzvahs, even though he has 49% mitzvahs, right? He's still havi rasha l'chol deis. That's still considered a rasha. So we're not talking about completely off the derech people. We're talking about people who are, let's say, they're 49% observant. Even that's called a rasha, according to all meanings of the word rasha. And still, the Smag would say, put on tefillin, because you want to be good. You're not a bad person. You're not a kofer. You're just someone who, let's say, because of his taivas, hey, he has a lifestyle that's 51% bad. And anyway, you don't know how the aveiros and mitzvahs are weighed, so it could be someone who end up at 51% aveiros without knowing it, right? Umevur b'shalas shuvas hamabit. Mabit says poiskim b'dabrim b'lashonis mushalim. Poiskim use borrowed language sometimes. The Indian tzaddik for Rasha. So here the Smag, one of the poiskim, used the word Rasha, and he didn't mean a real Rasha. So this is to counter what we read last time, the Babich Rebbe, just to look at it one more time. Here, on page 3 of my sheets from him, he says, Kasav Smag mitzvah sasei gimel ein l'chol rasha shelo yehi roi l'niach tefillin, roi l'tefillin. He says, V'ein l'farish Smag medaber m'nogei l'rasha binyanim yuchadim. You can't say like the Satmar Rebbe says that he's only talking about a rasha in certain things. Shahari mefarish she'ein l'chol rasha. He says, no, it says ein l'chol rasha. Yeah? So, but the Satmar Rebbe is saying, very simple, you have to look at the historical context. The Smag wasn't talking about koifrim over there. He wasn't talking about completely irreligious people. The Smag was going to Spain, and I have the Smag here, by the way, if you want to look at it inside. Yeah.
I read in a book that Baal Shem Tov was upset when he heard that Frank is converted to Christianity. So could that be like a Hasidic thing? I mean, I think it was good that Frank is converted to Christianity.
Well, because he's saying it's like he wanted them to do as many things as possible good. So even if they're going to be bad, they should at least do a little good. That's what he's saying?
I don't know.
That's the Baal Shem Tov held? I don't know.
Did you hear that? He got it.
No.
That's what I read.
Anyway, so this is the Smag.
I think he was like someone in Turkey, Baal Shem Tov.
Oh,
the simple Jew. It's not a Hasidic.
I don't know. Okay. Oid zois darashti lahem. He says, I darshan to them. Kimasha Amru Rabbeinu. This is the Chazal say tefillin tzrichim guf naki to Alisha b'ak navayim shel yishon v'shel yafiach bohem zehu be'adam shemanicham kol hayoim. This is only by people that put them on all day. Kuloi k'mitzvasam pen yishkechem alav, because he might forget that they're on him and he might do some of these things. V'yaseh bohem davar she'enu haglim. Al b'shas tefillah, but to wear them during davening ein l'chol rasha shelo yehi roi l'tefillin. Everybody should put on tefillin. Kal v'chomer mi sefer Torah shehu mekudesh yoser sheyesh boi kol Torah kula. The Sefer Torah has the whole Torah in it. With tefillin, ein boy kiyim arba parshias, it only has the 4 parshias. Shehem b'soich, or they're wrapped up in skin. V'akol oichsim b'sefer Torah b'shas tefillah. Everyone holds a Sefer Torah. Sha'akol yicholim liznag b'tahara b'shas tefillah. During davening, everybody could withhold themselves and keep themselves clean. Okay, and then that's the part that we quoted. But look down here now. Here's another part that's nugei to us. By the way, when he says darashti lohem, he means he spoke in front of all these people that that in Spain that weren't putting on tefillin. He says, "Ki yoser chayfetz HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'adam Rasha sheyaniach tefillin." HaKadosh Baruch Hu actually wants more that the Rishonim should put on tefillin. Me'adam tzadik, more than the tzadikim. V'ikar tefillin nitavu liyos yikaran l'Rishonim. The main point of tefillin is to remind you of the mitzvahs. So who's forgetting about the mitzvahs? The Rishonim are, right? Uli yisharim derech toiva v'yoyster heim tzrichim. Uli yashram, sorry, and to make people straighten out. Derech toiva v'yoyster heim tzrichim zecher. And these Rishonim need the reminder more. V'chizak me'oystem shegadu b'yiras shemayim kol yimeim, rather than those people that grew up being religious all their lives. Ve'evesi raya gedola. I brought a very strong proof. Ki b'tefillin yesh arba parshias uv'chol achas kasu ulatoy tefos chutz me'achas. All 4 parshias say the word ulatoy tefos, except for Kaddish. Parshas Kaddish it says luzikaron. Sheshina bohen akasti v'kasti bo luzikaron. L'lamed teaches you she'ikar chiyuv tefillin l'oisam shetzrichim yoyser zecher. The main point of tefillin is for the people who need a zecher. Okay, and then here's the historical context. Look at this paragraph. Vayihi achar arba alafim v'tesha meos v'tishim v'chamesh shanim l'brias olam. In the year 4,995 from creation, which comes out to 1235 CE. Haisa siba mina shamayim l'hoichiach. It was brought about by hashgacha that I ended up in a place where I could give techacha. Uvishnas Taftaf Kuf Tzadik Vav. The following year, Ha'isi Bisfarad. I was in Spain, L'hoichicham, and I gave them Musar on this subject. V'imetz HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael Osai. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made my arms strong, means he made me successful. B'chaloimas ha'Yehudim u'b'chaloimas ha'Goyim. I don't know what you're referring to here. The dreams of the Jews and the dreams of the Goyim. V'chazyonis ha'Koichavim, and maybe he asked stargazers what they said about it. I don't know what he means. Vayet elai chastoy. Hashem gave me grace in their eyes. Vatir gaz ha'aretz. Vayihi l'cherdas elokim. The whole world was shook up by my visit, and everyone was all excited about it. V'astu tshuvas kedolos. Everybody in Spain did tshuva. V'kiblu alafim revalas mitzvahs tefillin mezuzahs v'tzitzis. There were thousands and tens of thousands of Jews who accepted the mitzvah of tefillin. So we're talking about very frum people here. We're not talking about Lubavitchers putting on tefillin once in their lifetime. We're talking about like people who actually accepted to put on tefillin, to put on mezuzahs on their doors, v'tzitzis, and to start wearing tzitzis. V'chein b'shar ha'ratzis ha'yisi achar kach. I went around to other countries after that. V'niskablu dvarai b'chol ha'makaymis. They accepted my words in all the places I went. U'bikshu mimenu lichtoiv pirish ha'mitzvahs b'koitzer. And then that's when they asked me to start writing the Sefer the Smag, which is a short explanation of the mitzvahs. V'hinani shoyal oid me'es elokei galiyus Yisrael v'cheftzoi b'dei yadi yatzliach. I'm asking Hashem to help me to do that. It could be he's referring that he wrote the big Smag, the Smag Sefer Mitzvahs Gadol, and then they asked him to write a kitzer of it, which I don't think he did. I think someone else wrote the Smag. Smag is the kitzer. But the point is that these are the people that we're talking about here. So Lubavitch Rebbe Tainis, it says B'chol ein l'cha Rasha, but the Choyer of these Rishonim are not really Rishonim, not like today's Rishonim. All right, I think we should stop for today because this is a very long simon. It goes on until here, so maybe we'll finish next time. Yeah. We're holding in the middle of simon Nun Ches and Al Gula Val Tmura. So what the simon was about so far was about the machloikis between the Satmar Rebbe and the Lubavitch Rebbe regarding the tefillin campaign. In 67 Iyar, right before the 6-Day War began, the Lubavitch Rebbe began a campaign of putting on tefillin on non-religious Jews. And one of the sources he brought to support himself was the Smag. So really, let's take a step back. In the previous simon,
who brought the source? The Lubavitch or?
The Lubavitch Rebbe brought it, yeah. In the previous simon, the Satmar Rebbe brought down that there was a Beis Yosef. The Beis Yosef in Or Chaim Lamed Ches, who brings down the Kolboy, who brings the Maram in Rottenburg, who had a shaila about Bachrim, who couldn't keep themselves from being mechashiv machshavas rois while they were wearing tefillin. So the Ram Rottenburg said that people like that shouldn't put on tefillin. If they should try to control their machshavas, but if they can't, then they shouldn't put on tefillin, because he said that's a kal v'chomer from guf naki. The Gemara says in Daf Mem Tes and Shabbos, there's such a thing as a isser to put on tefillin when you don't have a guf naki, you don't have a clean body. The Gemara explained that means hafacha, that means like passing gas. But the Maram Rottenburg said that if that's considered not clean, then kol shekain, that machshavas rois are considered not clean. So therefore, people shouldn't put on tefillin if they have these machshavas rois. And it's brought down by the Beis Yosef, it's brought down by the Mechaber and Shulchan Aruch also, and the Ramah. So that's the psak halacha. If someone is not able to take away his bad machshavas, he shouldn't put on tefillin. So the Satmar Rebbe's Tanya on the Lubavitcher Rebbe was, these people who you're putting on tefillin on, they're not from, they don't care about machshavas rois, and for sure they're going to think these machshavas while they're wearing tefillin. So how could you put tefillin on them? Okay? Mm-hmm. So Lubavitcher Rebbe said two arguments in response. Number one was, and we read this inside in the Likutei Sichos, which I brought along today also in case we have to look at it, but Lubavitcher Rebbe said, number one, during the time, these people never put on tefillin in their lives before. So when a person does something new, during the time that he's doing it, he's going to be thinking about what he's doing, because that's the derech. Even if someone is fartif in machshavas rois his whole life, but l'maisa right now he's doing something new that he never did, so he's going to think about the tefillin. That's what his first argument was. And the second argument was that the Smag, in the Sefer Mitzvahs, in Mitzvahs Asay Gimel, the Smag says that, the quote was, Ein lecha Rasha shelo yehei roi l'tefillin. He says, during the whole day, to put on tefillin all day long, like Mikra Adin you're supposed to, that I understand. Maybe if someone is not able to be careful about guf naki, he shouldn't do it. But during davening, he said, Ein lecha Rasha, there's nobody in the world who shouldn't put on tefillin. So on that, Lubavitcher Rebbe said, you see that everybody could put on tefillin, right? So the Satmar Rebbe answered, and we read this last time, the beginning of the simon, he said the word Rasha, in that context, doesn't refer to a real irreligious Jew. It refers to somebody who's basically religious, and he's just afraid that he might not be on the madrega to put on tefillin. And
so he acknowledges that Rishoyim shouldn't put on tefillin?
Who does?
The Lubavitcher Rebbe?
No, the Lubavitcher Rebbe holds everybody should put on tefillin. And he brings a ride from this Smag. The Smag says,
oh my God.
Well, because the Smag says, Ein lecha Rasha shelo yehi roi l'tefillin. So he's taking it literally. So on that, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Satmar Rebbe answered that the Smag didn't mean, when he said Rasha, it's a borrowed term. It doesn't mean Rasha, because Rasha could mean different things. Sometimes a Rasha means somebody who is 49% good and 51% bad, right? That's a Rasha b'dinoi. And sometimes, and that person is already considered a Rasha.
So he doesn't have
what?
He doesn't have any exceptions?
What? Who doesn't have any exceptions?
The Lubavitch?
Oh, who we would not put on tefillin? I don't think so. Yeah.
Perhaps you want to turn. I don't know if you want to.
Or he brings from the Tanya that a Rasha could mean somebody who's just one step below a tzaddik. Anybody who does anything wrong is called a Rasha. So there's a lot of meanings to the word Rasha.
Zeldin.
Oh, that's his name, right? So, yeah. So then he says that the Smag, historically speaking, the Smag was referring to those kind of people. He brings down the Ater Zav, but we saw it inside in the Smag himself, that he says in the year 1235, he went to visit Spain, and he went around and darshaned about tefillin, and all the people accepted upon themselves to put on tefillin every day, and to put on tzitzis, and to put on mezuzahs on the door. So these are from Jews. These are Jews who just, for some reason, they believed that they were not on the madrega to put on tefillin, and the Smag convinced them that they should do it. But it's not talking about Rishonim. That's his counter-argument. Now let's go back and see inside the continuation. Okay? We're on, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines from the bottom, in the middle of the line. The oid she'ein lasois plukta bein harishonim. He says, another reason to say that the Smag means like I say, and not like the Lubavitcher Rebbe says, is because we don't want to make a machlokes between the Rishonim. B'makom she'ef shel hashvoisan, if it's possible to make them say the same thing. It's better. It's always better. One of the klalim in Psak is it's always better to try to make everyone agree, unless they explicitly disagree. So according to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, they explicitly disagree, right? You have the Rameh Rottenberg and the Orchos Chaim brought by the Beis Yosef and the Kolboy, that they all hold that someone shouldn't put on tefillin if they're going to have machshavas rois. And according to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Smag holds any Rasha could put on tefillin. So it comes out to machlokes, right? And we want to prefer to make no machlokes if we can. So therefore, we'd rather say that the Smag really agrees with them, and he's talking about people who are basically from. Okay? Ubefrat loymar sheyachleku b'metzias, especially to say that it's machlokes and metzias. That's really not a geschmacka thing to have, right? If you try as hard as you can not to say that Rishonim are arguing about the actual facts. Maybe they're arguing about halacha, but not about facts. So according to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, it would seem that the Smag is arguing in the facts, right? He's saying that Rishonim are able to be mechaven their minds and not think about whatever, machshavas rois, while they're wearing tefillin. And according to the Rameh Rottenberg, even from Bachrim can't do that. So it's kind of like a machlokes and metzias. The Al Kapanim mevur bidvarim hanal. He says at least you see the yesh metzias kozeh misha enu yachol lahamid atzma. You see from the words of the Rameh Rottenberg that there is such a thing as people who can't control themselves milahar b'tefillin, from having bad thoughts about wearing tefillin. Be'oiden alav. We see this from experience, that there are people like this who say that they can't be machashiv. So, first of all, it's a metzias, it's a observable metzias, and secondly, the Rameh Rottenberg says it, and the Beis Yosef says it, and on the other hand, you have the Smag, who's apparently, according to the Lubavitcher Rebbe at least, he's saying that anybody could think machshavas toivus while he's wearing tefillin. Okay, you anyway can't say that the Smag means every Rasha in the world. Why? Because the Hare Amru Razal, HaTzadikim Libam Master Biyadam. The Tzadikim have control of their hearts, meaning they have control of their minds. The Rashaim Hey Mesurim Biyad Libam, but the Rashaim don't have control. Their minds, their Yetzer Hara is in control of them. Uvli safek yesh rishayim ba'olam shelo yuchlu limshal al machshvois libam b'shum oifen. He says it's no doubt that there are rishayim in the world who will not be able to control their thoughts at all. So you can't say the Smag is making a blanket statement that every Rasha in the world should put on tefillin, because there are definitely some rishayim out there, even if you're going to tanya that some are good, but other ones, there are definitely some that can't control themselves. Not only by murmuring lehachis, people who are like deliberately anti-religious, even people who they like Yiddishkeit, except that they can't control themselves, that they're completely sunken into taivas of averis all the time. And they don't keep the Torah and the mitzvahs. Such people cannot control their minds from thinking about these thoughts. Because he says even by regular people, even by Erlich Yidden, Chazal say, So he says, Shahari bistam b'nei adam amru razal. By regular people, even regular Jews, Chazal say, of a bastard daf kuf samach dal on the base, gimel averis ein adam nitzol mehen b'chol yoim. There are 3 averis that people don't escape every day. Every day a person will do these averis because they're so common. And one of them is hirhur avera, thinking about averis, thinking about like znus. That's something that comes up every day in people's minds because it's a very, very difficult thing to be careful of it. So he's saying even from Jews think about this. So you're going to tell me that take some non-religious Jew off the street and he's not going to think about it? So again, like we said before, the Lubavitcher Rebbe's response was, for this 1 minute while he's putting on tefillin for the first time in his life, he's going to be so interested in his new experience that he's not going to think about anything else. So that's a good argument for that case.
I've seen it.
But the problem is, the quote from the Smag implies that he would hold that anybody could continually put on tefillin. So let's say the Lubavitchers get some guy to put it on every day. It could be, right? They'll convince someone, you're not keeping anything else, but at least every day put on tefillin, right? They'll come over to the shliach's house and put it on every day, right? So such a person, once he gets used to it, you don't have the argument anymore that it's a new experience for him. Okay. Let's go on. V'hizir Noam Elimelech, Zichron Levracha. Noam Elimelech, B'tzetel Cotton, warns people, he says, Shaloi lishois machshava ra b'moichay, not to let a bad thought stay in your head. V'shaloi l'tamei seichel elyon, not to be matami the higher seichel. V'kosav al zeh skulos v'etzis, loymar, he said, the Noam Elimelech gives you like ideas for how to expel the bad thought from your head, and he say kamapam, you say over and over the psukim v'nishmarta mikol davar ra, which is a pasuk that relates to thoughts of znus. Nishmarta mikol davar ra, think, stay far from anything that's bad. V'lois sasuru achrei levavchem v'achrei einechem, don't go after your hearts and your eyes. The gam masha amru Chazal, and also the words of Chazal shaloi Yahar Adam Bayoim V'Yavoy Lidei Tuma B'Layla. Person shouldn't think during the day and have Tuma at night. And you say these things over and over again, and that will help get rid of the Machshav Ra. Move on. She'ein HaKavana Ba'amir Bilvad. The Noam Elimelech doesn't mean just to say the words. Ela Kavanas Halev. You have to think about it while you're saying it. She'ein Bozeh Toyelas Ela Im Mechavin Liboy Bozeh. It doesn't help unless you think about what you're saying. The Noam Elimelech is talking to from Jews here, people who fear Hashem. The Rishaim who are like sunken into these thoughts all the time, they don't have any ability and they don't have the willpower. They don't want to push away these thoughts from their minds. They don't care. It must be Shadiber Hasmag. The Smag was talking about Migeder Rishaim Sha'asak Imoim, the type of Rishaim that he dealt with, which means that they weren't really Rishaim. They were really pretty good people. They were just maybe not the highest Madrega. Shemevur Midvarav Shabal Lispala. These people came to Shul, they came to Daven, they came to hear his speeches, V'hechziram B'tshuva, and he made them do tshuva, V'kiblu Aleihem Mitzvahs Tefillin, and they accepted upon themselves to do Tefillin. He gave them a rebuke, and they accepted the rebuke. The Smag doesn't mean all the Rishaim in the world. Now that we've established that the Smag doesn't mean every Rasha in the world, we'd rather not make a machlokes about it. Because again, we had the Beis Yosef bringing down a shita that you shouldn't put on tefillin with a machshav ra. So don't say the Smag argues and says, yeah, everybody could be nisar from machshav ra. No, he doesn't mean such people. The Smag could agree with the other poskim on this issue. Even if you're going to be an action and you're going to be stubborn and say, yeah, the Smag really meant anybody in the world, every Rasha could put on tefillin, and they could stop thinking, they could put on tefillin. You could say that you put on tefillin. He says, don't say that the machlekes is in that point, that the Smag should say, yeah, every Rasha could be mechaven his mind and not have machshavos. Don't say that. V'yoyster nira de pluksastem bisfaras hakal v'chomer shehevi aram mirottenberg. That rather we should say that they're arguing about the Kal V'chomer of the Rami Rottenberg. The Rami Rottenberg said, and this was in Simon ben Zion, quoted it over here. He said, "Va'afilu choyle me'ayim aser lahanichon." Even people who have a upset stomach and they have gas coming out of them, they shouldn't put on tefillin. Kol shekein shelo yinag bohem kalis roish b'tayvas nashim. So all the more so that you shouldn't put on tefillin if you're thinking about women. Okay, that's the Ram Rottenberg. So on that Kal V'chomer, he's saying the Smag argues. Shaharei habibavli loy huskar ela shelo yafiach bohem the shelo yisham bohem. The Bavli only says that guf naki means that you shouldn't let out gas and that you shouldn't go to sleep with them. That's the Bavli in Shabbos Daf Mem Tes. We saw last time. Ve'efsher shehasmag lo yispor Kal V'chomer. Wait a minute, up here. Sorry, Ela Shelo Yafiach V'kasav Aram Shebekol Boy. The Ram Rottenberg says Shekol Shekein Shelo Yinag Bohem Kalis Roish. All the more so that you shouldn't have the bad thoughts. V'kachas Fir Leho Orchas Chaim. That's how the Orchas Chaim holds. V'Beis Yosef V'Aramah. They hold like that. The Divrei Yerushalmi Heim B'Kal V'chomer Mimash Kasav Abavli. The Yerushalmi, which implies that you shouldn't have Machshavas Rois, that's more strict. That's more of a svar than the Bavli. Shelo yishan v'shelo yafiach bohem. That it just says not sleeping, not letting gas. Ve'efsher shasmag lo yisbar Kal V'chomer zeh. Could be, if you really want to be in action, you really want to say that the Smag meant Rishayim should put on tefillin, then fine, say it. But say it that the Smag argued on the Kal V'chomer. Umimela pligi hayushalmi v'abavli. The Yerushalmi and the Bavli argue about what guf naki means. Upasak ka Bavli, and the Smag paskins like the Bavli. Shaloi mayri ela misheina v'afacha. The only problem is sleeping or gas. Umisheina v'afacha efshel lizar l'shah kala be'oyin alav. The Smag holds that it's possible to be careful not to do those two things while you're wearing tefillin, even for a Rasha. Aval limshol al hirhure levavoy, but for a Rasha to control his thoughts, efshel l'Rasha gomer. A Rasha who doesn't keep Torah mitzvahs, it's impossible for him to control his thoughts. The apushe pukta loy mafshinan. We'd rather not make the machlekes so big. Oh wait, we're up in here. Umikol shekain b'mumrim lahachis. All the more so if it's someone who doesn't keep mitzvahs, just because of his own taiva. So kol shekain, someone who's mumrim lahachis, he hates mitzvahs. Ukamavur b'divrei apoiskim. So it's more likely to say the Smag really agrees on the Metzias. We don't want to make a bigger machlokes than we need to. It's more mistaber that the Smag is not arguing at all. Now he's taking a step further. He's saying the Smag is not even arguing on the din, because you see the Beis Yosef doesn't bring it down. The manner of the Beis Yosef is not to leave out the Smag. Even if he doesn't paskin like him, he still brings him down. So therefore we rather say the Smag doesn't argue at all. Even if you're going to say the Smag argues, and even if you're going to say he argues in Metzias, but we don't care because Ladina, we paskin like the Shulchan Aruch, he says. Einav kamina bazeh ladina kivan shekvar hikriya haramazal. The Ramah comes down la'alach lifsot karam be'akol boy paskin like the Ram, and therefore ein lanu ela divrei Ramah. We paskin like the Ramah. The paskimin kavasi b'chol makom. We hold like him in every place. So therefore the halacha should be that you're not allowed to put on tefillin on Rishayim. So even Lubavitch Rebbe, even if you have a Smag on your side, you still can't do it because the Smag is not la'alacha.
He died in 90.
He says that unfortunately, even among people who are religious, there's some people, because they didn't do tshuva properly on their chet, the chet of znus, of bad thoughts, when they were young. Right, the tshuva gemura, they didn't do complete tshuva. So kashalahem li shamer uli zar mehir hurim rachman al. It's hard for them to resist having Hirhurim. So even Bachrim that the Satmar Rebbe dealt with in his time also had this problem. But it's still allowed to put on tefillin because most of the time they're not so bad, right? They're not so into these thoughts. They can't. They could hold themselves back for a short time while they're wearing the tefillin. And because there's a suffix, for that we don't forbid putting on tefillin. Bishvil kach. Kasher pasuk haramazal. The Magen Avraham says that for a suffix you don't withhold yourself. By the way, that was one of the Lubavitcher Rebbe's tainas. I'll open it up here. Just a second. We saw it last time in the Likutei Sichos, Chelik Vav, page 273. He says, Ein shum yisoid. Again, the shaila he's going on is the Satmar Rebbe shaila. He says, L'choyer aser lihishtadel ima chafshim laniach tefillin. He says that l'choyer it should be forbidden to try to get non-religious Jews to put on tefillin. Kivan shetefillin tzrichim guf tzarich liyos guf naki v'yizar mi'irhurim. You have to be careful from Hirhurim. Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim Lamed Ches. V'yomer Razal shalosh averis einan nitzal mehem b'chol yom hirur avera. So on that, his answer is Ein shum yisoid loymar lachshosh asher elu aruchokim la'es atam mikiyam at Torah mitzvahs. There's no fear, there's no reason to fear that the people who are now non-observant, ukeshematzim lohem, when you suggest to them and you offer them, you ask them to put on tefillin, manichim tefillin, they actually do put it on. Not mistaber that they're going to have the hinei davke b'regalim elu yaharu. Don't think that just at that moment they're going to be mahar. And so this paragraph he's talking about the Chiddush. I said that over already. This one, number Gimel, is about the Chiddush. But look at this one. Even if there were chashash, Harei Pirush HaMagen Avraham, the Admor HaZaken, he says the Alter Rebbe, right? Hey v'yoy l'psak halacha, v'hushi yadu aloi b'vadai. It's only when you know for sure she'ef shelo yahar that you're going to be mahar. Aval b'stafik lo yimna mi mitzvah tefillin. From if you're not sure whether you're going to have Hirhurim, then you could put on tefillin. So that was really his argument, that nobody's really sure, right? So why not do it? So on that, the Rebbe is saying, yeah, it's true that by Bachrim, in my yeshiva, there are some Bachrim who, unfortunately may have Hirhurim, okay? But those people are a suffix. So the Magen Avraham says, put on tefillin. If you're a suffix, put on tefillin. Aval elu harishayim, but these people who are totally not religious, shekol machshavtam v'iskam ba'arais. All day long they're thinking about arais. Rachman v'tzlan. U'mezuhamim b'tachlis hazuama. They're completely sunken into that. Completely, their minds are dirty all the way through. The Chomagamasam Laman Rabbi Zima. Their whole purpose in the world is to increase the amount of znus that goes on. That's the reason why the Israeli army drafts women. Because the women in the army obviously are going to be mufkar. They're going to be hefkerdik. They're going to be there's a lot of znus that takes place in the army. What?
It's going to be easy.
Yeah. So people like that are for sure not allowed to put on tefillin. So now he goes back to a question that he raised in the previous simon. Previous simon he spoke about that today, after the war of 67, there seemed to be Bali Tshuva. But he said it's not really Bali Tshuva, it's just people putting on tefillin. Okay, but why? He said we find that tefillin are used to convince people that you're reliable, Er L'Chayid. You see in the Yerushalmi, you had a story about that, right? So he says, but why tefillin? Even today, tefillin are being used as a trick to get people to think Zionism is good. But why tefillin? Why did the Samach Mem chap on the mitzvah of tefillin of all mitzvahs to convince people of this?
I read an article in the Jewish Week. So
now he's answering, why did the Samach Mem come up with tefillin as his trick to show people that Zionism succeeded? So he says, that's why he put this idea into the world to trick people with mitzvahs tefillin. Because he gets another another objective accomplished with this. It's like he kills two birds with one stone. He has the tefillin, he's convincing people that, yeah, the Israeli army is off from and everything, and also he got non-religious people to put on tefillin. That's also a point for the Samach Mem. Magdilim koyach ha-sitra achra, Rahman al-Islam. They strengthen the power of the sitra achra. It's pretty strong words against Lubavitch.
Yeah, I think this is over the top in my opinion.
Umasha Kosvu Toisvis Varash. He says, now, what about the Toisvis and the Rush that we quoted before? To the Hachi Nakat Alisha. So let's look back at this again. This is in Shabbos Mem Tes. Take a look. See if I can find my other copy of it. We'll just look inside for a moment before we see it. So it says, Omer Rabbi Yanai, Tefillin Srichin Guf Naki. Tefillin require a clean body, Alisha Baknafaim, like Alisha, the master of the wings. Right in the first Gemara. What does it mean to have a clean body? Abai Omer Shelo Yafiach Bohem, Rava Omer Shelo Yishim Bohem. Okay, we talked about that already. V'amai Kari Le Baknafaim. Why did they call Alisha the master of the wings? Shapam Achas Gazer Malchus Roimi Rasha Gzeira Al Yisrael Shel Kol Meniach Tefillin Yinakru Es Moichai. The Roman government made a decree that whoever puts on tefillin, they're going to, stab him in the head. So v'haya Alisha manicham. Alisha was putting on tefillin. V'yotzi l'shuk. He didn't do it secretly. He went out in the street and put on tefillin. Ra'ahu kastor echad. The policeman saw him. Ratz mipanam, and he ran away. V'ratz achrav, and he ran after him. V'kivan she'igia etzlei, when he reached him, natla meroishay bi'achsan biyadoi. He took off the tefillin and held them in his hand. So Amar loy mazeh biyadecha. What's that in your hand? Amar loy kanfei yoina. It's the wings of a dove. Pashalis yadoi v'nimsu kanfei yoina. He opened up his hands, and it turned out to be the wings of a dove. Lefichach korin oisay Alisha baknafayim. That's why they call him Alisha, the master of the wings, because this nace happened to him. And by the way, why was he willing to risk his life to put on tefillin? It's not one of the three, Averis Chamuros. So the Ran says that it's mutter for a tzaddik to go lifnim mishur sedin and risk his life even for another Aveir. You could also answer that it was a shas hashmad. It was a time of the government making decrees. But in any case,
Daniel Kiddush Hashem.
Yeah. So look at Toisvis here. Alisha baknafayim lahachi naked Alisha. Why does it mention that you have to have a guf naki like him, like Alisha? The mistama, because we can assume that kivan shenas eloi nes betfillin, since a nes happened regarding his tefillin, hay zahir bohen. He must have been careful for hay eloi guf naki, and he must have had a clean body. Umizeh hatam, then Tosfos adds on, Umizeh hatam ein anu yicholim lipater. He says that we can't use as an excuse. Apparently this thing about the Smag was talking about, that people didn't put on tefillin, Tosfos also observed the same problem, right? So he says, you can't use that as an excuse not to put on tefillin, because Shaharei bazeh anu yicholim lizayer. With this we could be careful not to put on tefillin, not to have machshavas, not to, let out gas. He says, so then why do we see so many people not putting on tefillin? Why is it such a weak thing in the hands of Yidden today? We see even in the time of Chazal, this mitzvah was not totally observed. Why? The Gemara says in Shabbos, Reb Shimon ben Elazar Oimer, Kol mitzvah shaloi masru atzmam Yisrael aleha, b'shas gzeres hamalchus. Any mitzvah that Jews did not risk their life for at the time of Gzeira could go in tefillin. Adayin hi refuya biyadam. It's still weak in their hands, meaning that not everybody keeps it. Mashenkin bris milah is something that Jews were moist nefesh for, so every single yid keeps bris milah. Yeah. So that's Tosfos. So he says, and the Rosh says the same thing. So he says, Umasha Kosva Tosfos Arash the Lahachi Naked Alisha, that we picked Alisha because the Kivan the Ir Eloi Nes Mistama Haya Shomer Mitahara. Since he had a Nes happen to him, he must have kept the tefillin completely tahor. Ad kan toich divreim. L'chayra lama li lahavi raya al zeh. Why do we need a proof from someone for this rule? Just say the rule. You need a guf naki. Period. Why you have to bring an example? Ki bevadai Alisha tzadik gadol haya v'kima mitzvah. Certainly Alisha was a great tzaddik and he kept the mitzvah. Kedinoi v'shamrim tahara. Oh, so it means why do we have to bring a raya that a nes happened? Not why do we have to bring a raya from the person Alisha. We understand maybe we can make an example out of him, but why are we mentioning that a nes happened? That's his kasha. Just say he was a tzaddik, right? The answer is even when you have a great tzaddik, kol tzidkus eino yala chazaka. His tzidkus is only a past assumption that he was a tzaddik until now. So assume, that he's going to continue that way. Machmas cheskes kashrus. Avoloi bira gomer, but it's not a certainty. Efshar sheishtana chas v'shalom. It could change. Every tzaddik, you never know. Today he'd be a tzaddik, tomorrow he might change his mind. Even the great Shmuel HaKatan, the composer of the tefillah of the minim, right? There was still a possibility that he would become bad. The Gemara in Brachos, and I have that here somewhere. Here. Oops, there's 2 pages to this. That's the second page. This is the first page. Brachos. What daf is it? It's Chaf Chesem and Beis. Bottom line, or bottom 2 lines actually. Taner Rabbanan Shimon HaPekuli Histir Shmoina Esrei Brachos Lifnei Rabban Gamliel Ala Seder B'Yavne.
I'm sorry, what was it?
The last 2 lines of the Gemara.
Okay. What's Pekuli mean?
That was maybe the city he came from, yeah.
Okay.
So he established the text of the Shmon Esrei. Amar Lahem Rabban Gamliel.
It says in the Rasha, it says something else. Mochar Pekluni. Oh,
you're right. Okay, yeah. So his job, he was a seller of cotton. Yeah. Okay. So that's what he was, but he's the one who wrote the Shmon Esrei text. So he said, Rabban Gamliel said to the Chachamim, Klum yesh adam sheyodei l'stakin birkas aminim. He said it's time to add a bracha to Shmon Esrei.
So it's Semer's cotton now.
Semer Geffen. So
what's Pekuli?
I guess the rolls.
Oh, cotton, like right? It says
rolls of cotton.
Shikon cotton.
Yeah.
It's so nuts that I was just learning this.
Yeah?
2 days ago, yeah.
Wow.
That's exactly what
Anyway, so he said, Klum yesh adam, is there anybody sheyodei l'stakin birkas aminim who knows how to write a new bracha for Shmon Esrei for against the heretics? So Amad Shmuel HaKatan v'tikna. One of the sages, Shmuel HaKatan, got up and he wrote this bracha. Now, L'shana Acheres, 1 year later, Shachacha. Shmuel HaKatan himself forgot the bracha. And they didn't write things down in those days. They didn't have written Sidurim like we have today. So he forgot it. And he was davening for the Amud, and he got up to the bracha of the minim. V'hishkif ba shtayim v'shalosh shais. He stood there for 2 or 3 hours trying to remember his bracha. Imagine that, in the middle of davening, everyone's waiting for the Baal Tefillah to finish Shmon Esrei, and he can't finish because he can't remember the bracha. I guess they couldn't remember it either because they could have reminded him, right? V'loi ha'aluhu, and they didn't take him down from being a Baal Tefillah. The Baal Tefillah used to, stand low down by the Aron Kodesh, and ha'aluhu would mean to take him up, literally, to take him out of the position. So Chazal say earlier, the Gemara says earlier that if someone makes a mistake in Birkas Aminim, actually it's about to say it now. It says, Amai loy helu, why didn't they take him out? Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav Tov b'chol brachas kulon ein malin oisai. If a person makes a mistake in a different bracha, you don't take him out from being a chazan. But Birkas Aminim malin oisai. But he makes a mistake in the heretic's blessing, you take him out. Because Chashin and Shem Amin, who were afraid that he might be a min. So why didn't they take Shmuel HaKatan out? Maybe he was a min. What do you mean? Shmuel HaKatan was the tzaddik who wrote the bracha. Now they're thinking that he's a min? So the Gemara says, yeah, Shani Shmuel HaKatan, the EU tikna, because he's the one who wrote it, so you're not going to think that could happen to him. Maybe he changed his mind and became a heretic. A good person doesn't become bad. Maybe he does. A tzaddik could go back from his tzidkus and do bad. So the Gemara answers, Rasha meikar. That's only talking about when he was originally a Rasha and he became a tzaddik, then he could go back to being a Rasha. Aval tzaddik meikar loy. A person who's a tzaddik from the beginning won't. V'loy, you're telling me not, I'll prove to you that it could happen. V'atnan, al tamin bi'atzmecha ad yoim moischa. Don't believe in yourself until the day you die. Shahari Yochanan Kohen Gadol, shimesh pekuna gedol l'shmoinim shana. Yochanan Kohen Gadol was a Kohen Gadol for 80 years. U'levasoif nas tetzuki, and then he became a heretic, right? So Amar Abaye, hu yanai, hu Yochanan. Rava Amar Yanai Yanai Lechud v'Yochanan Lechud. There's a machlokes if Yanai and Yochanan were the same person. So Yanai Rasha meikarai, v'Yochanan Tzaddik meikarai. So Hanichal Abai, it's good according to Abai who says that this person who became a tzduki was Yanai. So that means he was a Rasha at the beginning and became a Tzaddik, became a Rasha. El Rava, but according to Rava that he started out being a Tzaddik, Kasha. So Amar Lach Rava Tzaddik meikarai nam midil mahadar. Really, it is possible for someone who is a tzaddik from the beginning of his life to change and become a Rasha. So back to the story of Shmuel HaKatan. Why didn't they take him down? Answer is Shiny Shmuel HaKatan de Askilba, because he started the bracha. So that's the thing. A Rasha, a real min, wouldn't want to say a curse against himself. That's the assumption. So when he gets to Birkas Haminim, he's going to try to get away with skipping it. Maybe he'll just go straight from Melech Tzedakah Mishpat. He'll just start right away Al Tzadikim. He'll just skip over it. But if someone starts the bracha of minim and he says Al Shinim Malti Sikva V'Chol HaMinim Kerega Yavedu, and then he can't remember the rest, okay. But you see already that he's not a min, so you're not going to fire him for that. Basically, the point is even a tzaddik gomer could become a rasha. Okay. So the question is over here. So then, how do you know someone's a tzaddik to put on tefillin? You just mentioned Alisha as a tzaddik; it doesn't prove anything. Aval loy bir gomer. Shmuel HaKatan. Aval hanes. Here's what he says: hanes hu bir gomer. If a nes happens to someone, that proves that he must really be a tzaddik. Al kain kosva toisvis. That's why Toisvis says the Masha Omer Rabbi Yanai tefillin tzrichen guf naki ke Alisha. Why did he pick Alisha? Naktu b'divrei Alisha diyada lizar bohem. Because he knew how to be careful with the tefillin, u'lishamram b'tahara, v'nispara tzid kosei b'bir gomer. And they knew he was a tzaddik, mizeh she'iru loy nes. Kain nearly. That's the point that a nes happened to him. Now, does he mean to say that someone who doesn't have nisim happening to him shouldn't put on tefillin? Obviously not, right? Everybody should put on tefillin if they're at least a good Jew. Why should they desist from tefillin just because they didn't have a nes happen? Yeah. So, v'nilman mizeh de'ena kodesh baruch hu oisa nes rak l'tzadi gomer. But anyway, agav, you see from this interesting thing when we get to the first part of haGuela that we learned in the other simanim, right? We spoke about nisim happening to Rishaim. Says you see from this that the Kodesh Baruch Hu doesn't do nisim to Rishaim. He only does nisim to tzaddikim gemurim. If he's not a real tzaddik, then lo yisave lo nisa. He won't have a nes. So that's the only way that Alisha was zeicha to this nes is because he was a tzaddik. And for sure we don't do nisim for Rishaim. So therefore, the Zionists couldn't have had any nisim. He says, we explained this before. We also see from this story that if you don't keep them in cleanness during the time you're putting them on, so this is a response to a different thing that the Lubavitcher Rebbe said. Let's go back and try to find it. What? Not that. 1 second. And we saw this last time, but it's worth looking at it again. Likutei Sichos, Chelik Vav, page 271. Okay, he says B'yoshi higiu elai kama shailas v'tainas b'negelis oiris the mitzvah tefillin. Because I received many inquiries and arguments against my campaign of tefillin. That these tainas could cause the shluchim to go, to be a little weaker about it. Even though normally I don't go into into debates. I'm going to answer the questions. Shaila Aleph. And this is not the Satmar Rebbe Shaila, but it's a Shaila other people asked. He said, Madua nivchara mikol hatayu mitzvahs tefillin davka. Why did I pick on mitzvahs tefillin? I want to go and make people do a mitzvah. Fine. Pick a different mitzvah. Why tefillin? Okay? So he says, B'tchilas ha'is oirist al davar zeh, hidgashti b'feirish. He says, when I started this campaign, I explicitly said, Sha'atam li'is oirist b'miyuchad al dvar mitzvahs hanachas tefillin. The reason I picked hanachas tefillin is miyusad hu al divrei razal. It's based on Chazal, brachas da'avav amid aleph, v'ra'u kol amei ha'oretz, ki shem Hashem nikra alecha, v'yar mimeka. Pasuk says that all the people of the world will see that the name of Hashem is called upon you and they'll be afraid of you. Elu tefillin shabaraish. These are the tefillin that you put on your head. Asher drisha sashah. He says at that time, Oz, b'tchilas hazman, the mitzvah tefillin, iyar tafshin chavzayin, ha'isa b'miyuchad shetipul aleim emasav afachad. That he says, I wanted the goyim, the Arabs who were about to attack the state of Israel to feel a fear of them. Yiras Amei Oretz Bnei Bnei Israel Shlo Yireu Chas Shalom Israel. They shouldn't do any attacks. That's why I made a campaign to do the mitzvah of tefillin. Okay, and he says V'ka'amar Nimog Zeh Nidgashi B'feirish Miyad B'tchilas HaYisoyros. I said this explicitly at the beginning. Uvemela Lapela Hashayla Zeh. It's unbelievable that people are even asking this question. Yeah, so. What we're about to read now is a little bit of a response to that. He says, we see from the story of Alisha, in tefillin, the imein shoymram b'tahara. If you don't wear them with cleanness, b'shas hanachasam, at least at the time you're putting them on, ein bohem koyach hagana. They don't protect. So the whole campaign of the Lubavitcher is to protect, right? That they should wear the tefillin and the Amei Art should be afraid of them. But according to this, it won't work. According to this, it won't work. Shahar ve'echlitu ha-toisvis. We see Toisvis says, B'divrayim, Te'i lav de Alisha shoymrim b'tahara. If not for the fact that Alisha kept them clean, lo ira lo nes. This nes would not have happened to him. V'hagana al yudeim. This protection from the Roman policeman wouldn't have happened. So now back to the main subject, which was Bali Tshuva, because of the 67 more on that. The Rebbe says, this doesn't matter. The time of Shabbos Tzvi, Yadua Shanasu Bali Tshuva Alafim Yisrael. There were thousands of Jews who became Bali Tshuva Al Yadoi, Kanal, and even they, not just tefillin, but everything. Tshuva, Tanesim, right? That the Gedolim of the time were not impressed with it. They realized that the source of this tshuva was a falsehood. From the roots of a snake, poison comes out. They realized that the source of their tshuva was kfira. They didn't have any doubts about the Shabbos Tzvi movement just because there were Bali Tshuva coming out of it. So today also, we shouldn't have any doubts. He says, They knew that this Tshuva was all part of the ploy of the Samach Mem, Kasher Mevur Kol Zeh, B'Sefer Tzitzatz Noivel Tzvi, Me Rabbi Yaakov Sasportas Zal. So this Sefer in Tzitzatz Noivel Tzvi talks about the Bali Tshuva, but he says we shouldn't be impressed because we know where it's all coming from.
Is my information correct that Tzitzatz Noivel Tzvi was only